Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I'm Lewis Cipher, and this is the Devil's Advocate Debate Club. Welcome back. Today I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about the Church of Sexual Humanism and my new place in it. The Church of Sexual Humanism was started by one Shannon Q, as I recall. I don't have notes in front of me, I apologize. Who started the church in response to some perceived, and perhaps actual, bigotry. I say this because I haven't looked into the incident in question. I've just seen people talking about it. But, there may very well have been some actual bigotry involved. Sounds like there probably was. And in response to someone being told they couldn't list their religious affiliation as sexual humanist, I think it was, they started this Church of Sexual Humanism so that people would be able to, because now it's a real thing. They did a hour-long live stream talking about it, and I watched bits and pieces of it, the introduction to it, when I was looking to be ordained into the church. So I will admit I did not watch the whole video, and I do not know everything there is to know about the church that I've just joined or the people who founded and started it. Looking through their Twitter feeds, I certainly think that there will be things that we agree on and things that we disagree on. As members of the LGBTQ community on Twitter, given my experience with other members of this community on Twitter, I'm likely to be called a bigot and at some point blocked, maybe mass blocked by the other members of the church that I've just joined. But ultimately speaking, even if the church represents things that I don't, and even if these people end up hating and blocking me, even though I just think it's all in good fun, that's exactly why I've joined, because it's all in good fun. Which doesn't mean that I didn't put some actual thought and effort into my title within the church, because right now at least, if you ask to be ordained, they're passing them out to, I don't know if everyone who asks is, but it seems like most people in the thread have been, and it didn't take long for me to be ordained under the title of my choice. So, I am officially the gender opportunistic priest of pansexuality in the Church of Sexual Humanism. Let's talk about what that means to me, because while I don't know exactly what they mean by the Church of Sexual Humanism, I can make some assumptions about what the phrase would mean just from the definition of humanism. Now, I do know that a lot of people on Twitter have, and outside of Twitter as well, have liked to redefine words of late in what I've been calling the destruction of language. I'm hoping that this is not another one of those cases, and that it will in fact be the Church of Sexual Humanism, because that's an idea that I like and can get behind. Humanism is a complex subject that I might get into in another video, but at its core, it's kind of the belief in free will at its core. It's the belief that humans have agency and that we can make important changes with that agency. It's kind of the belief that humans have some importance or merit in this world, and that we have an agency. And I would say that humanism leads to the logical conclusion that we have a responsibility to use that agency to better the world, but I don't know that it is outright stated anywhere in the philosophy. It's something I've been looking into a bit more deeply recently. So, since humanism is all about humans having their own agency over their decisions in the world around them, for the most part, and the Church of Sexual Humanism is named what it is, this would lead one to believe that it's basically a church dedicated to the idea that humans, even on a spiritual level, have an agency over their own identity and preferences. Now, the fact that it's sexual humanism and that they've made it about gender and identity as much as anything else is potentially concerning, since there's, the conflation between the LGBT community and just over-sexualization in general, and potentially even some statistics to support it. However, it doesn't seem to be the founding members of the church who've pushed any of the identity ideology or gender ideology into it. That just seems to be coming from people like me who have included it in their requests for ordination. Now, I did so because I just saw lots of other people including gender identity and figured it was just kind of part of the fun, which it certainly was for me. It was, by the way, the first reason I've had to change my Twitter bio since joining Twitter, as it now includes my title with the church. But sexual humanism would be, the belief that humans have agency over their own sexuality. This kind of indicates that it's not necessarily something that you're born with. You might be born with certain preferences, but that through your own will and your own agency, you might actually be able to change them. This is something that I've experienced in my own personal life and know to be true. There was certainly a time growing up when I considered myself, for most of my life, to be straight. And it's how I feel that I was probably born, and still for the most part am. However, variety is the spice of life, and through the years I've made a conscious decision to attempt to be more accepting in all ways in life, including with my own sexuality. So, sexual humanism is something that really appeals to me, as it's something I believe in through my own personal lived experience, but I'd certainly like to see more research done on the subject. Anyway, beyond that, there is, of course, my title, which I've already touched on one part of, but let's start at the beginning. I guess it's time to finally reveal to the Twitterati and the rest of the internet my gender. This is something which a lot of you have probably assumed, potentially incorrectly, and people online have gotten wrong a lot in every way that they possibly could. Now, I mentioned in an earlier video that potentially the closest generally accepted term for what my gender is would be gender fluid. What it really is gender opportunistic, and I've explained what this means in short detail to a few people in my life, but not to, I believe, anyone in the details that I'm about to give here. Gender opportunistic is similar to being gender fluid in that your gender can change from one thing to another at a moment's notice, depending on the situation. However, gender fluidity is dependent more upon your mood and what gender you feel like at that point in time, whereas gender opportunistic is, more of an automatic assumption. So it's more, I suppose, of a logical choice at any given moment to be whatever gender is potentially most beneficial. I know that sounds like I'm using gender to my advantage, and for the most part, I don't. For the most part, I act the sex that I was born. However, I have certainly enjoyed, when I was growing up, and from a very young age, dressing in clothes of the other gender. And as I've learned more and more about people, I guess I could also say that as I was growing up, one of my very close family members would quite frequently say, hey, I'm not raising a girl, because I had, in many ways, a lot more in common with the girls than the boys, despite my sex, as many of you can probably assume, being male, that being my biological sex. Now, I know a lot of people talk about getting in touch with their feminine side, but I was definitely the guy in high school that the other guy's girlfriends would take lingerie shopping with them. This is something that I got called gay for in high school, which I always thought was funny since I was going around seeing all of the other guys' girls half naked. And while I don't consider myself to be necessarily strictly straight, it is still my primary preference, one could say. And so I definitely got in touch with my feminine side, in that it was pointed out to me through the years that I had more of one than most people my sex. I potentially even could have a disgendered brain. If I do, I'm not interested in any surgeries, though, because, well, there's a number of reasons. I can get into that in another video. Anyway, regardless, I learned a lot about physiology, sociology, psychology, delved into the male and female brains, and found that I feel that I fall somewhere near the center. It makes it at times hard for me to communicate with anyone, but at times a lot easier for me to communicate with either of the two main recognized genders than they have communicating with each other. As I've also looked at my gender as somewhat more of a fluid thing from a younger age than a lot of people who aren't interested in transitioning, I also don't have that hard of a time getting into the headspace of people who've chosen a gender which is not male or female. And a lot of my friends growing up were in the otherkin community. In fact, several different types of otherkin community. So I've learned a lot about identities and identified personally with more than a few and aspects of most of them throughout my life. So at different times, I will portray myself in different lights. Even when I'm, dressed as a man and, say, working my job at the carnival, there are certainly times when I see people who I think throwing a little bit of the feminine swing into my hips and my voice will help draw them into the game. And, well, I'm admittedly opportunistic about this. I feel it's just living up to my full potential. I don't see this as being a predatory or negative thing. I think more people should look for the opportunities in their life and then accept them. I just do so a bit more actively on a moment-by-moment basis than most people consider to be good or healthy, I think. It's something I've got a lot of pushback from. So, yes, I'm gender opportunistic. That means that you shouldn't assume my gender, because I don't even always know what my gender is at any given moment. It also means that if you like a certain gender and I want you to like me, you should assume that I am that gender because, well, I'm opportunistic about it, and if I want you to like me and we're around each other, then I'll probably portray myself, at least most of the time, as the gender that you like to try and gain your affections. But if I don't want you to like me, you should assume that I'm the gender that you don't like. But really, I don't think that we should be liking or disliking people based on gender. Now, when it comes to sexual preferences, that's certainly one thing, and I understand it. But personalities just have... there are definitely contributing factors. Women have been found to be more... what was the word? Anyway, there's definitely, differences between the sexes I guess is what I should say. And this is where the importance between sex and gender, which is being muddled more and more day by day, is important once again, because there are biological differences between the sexes, but there aren't, when it comes to personality, any distinctions between the genders anymore, because gender is how you outwardly identify with your, clothing and your body language, not necessarily how you feel or are on the inside. It's also part of your gender identity, which is, a new term, but your gender itself, just looking at it in pure scientific terms, is how you outwardly express at any given time. And, well, if I'm wearing male clothing but expressing female body language in a male body using mostly female or, generally more stereotypically female speech patterns, then what can you really say about my gender in that moment other than, well, most people would say fluid, but I just prefer that we not talk about it and get along as people. This brings me to the last part of my title, Pansexuality. Now, as I said, I am mostly, and was for most of my life, straight. Or at least, okay, so when I was young, I considered myself straight. Going into high school, what I actually considered myself, though I shared this with absolutely no one at the time, was queer. And I don't mean gay. I mean queer as in different. See, queer has been co-opted to mean gay, that, boys who like boys, girls who like girls. However, what the term originally meant and still means in the dictionary is different. Away from the average, not normal. And I will say that, even when I was 100% only into women, my sexual preferences were never necessarily what I would consider to be normal. And so, yeah, I considered myself queer, but not gay, and trying to explain that to the first couple of people that I did even mention it to just became a nightmare. So it was something that I never really brought up seriously with anyone. However, pansexual would certainly fit under queer. So had it not been co-opted by, well, the L and G members of the LGBTQ community, and I know that the Q is there and that it means something different to some people, but it has been highly co-opted by L and G, let's face it. Were it not for that co-optment, I might still just consider myself queer. But at the same time, I've always believed that variety is the spice of life. I've pushed myself to be more accepting of things that I once found detestable. And I've played enough video games and watched enough science fiction to know that, for me at least, physical appearance has a lot less to do than personality when it comes to attraction. There's certainly aspects of both, but the perfect personality would override just about any body type. Maybe not any smell, but probably any look. So pansexuality is, often demonized in several different ways, as people just say it's an excuse to have sex with animals or something. And that's not what it is at all for me. It's more the acceptance that there might be genders or even sexes out there of species we haven't encountered, completely alien to us, who might still be thinking beings with personalities that I could be attracted enough to go completely outside of the, human choices. As I'm simply much, much more physically attracted to the female form, I would definitely be more attracted to aliens resembling human females to human males, but I could certainly be attracted to something else entirely under the right situation. So, pansexual fits, even if I'm not what would be classically considered a pansexual. Congratulations. You've got to know me a little bit more personally in ways you never would have without the Church of Sexual Humanism. These are things I had specifically intended not to share, especially the gender opportunistic part, because I think it'll piss some people off. Maybe even founding members of the church I've just joined. Who knows? I hope not, because so far I think they're cool. Regardless, though, I don't know a lot about the founders of the church, or the church itself, or what it stands for or is supposed to mean. I do know a fair bit about the dictionary definitions of the words they're using, and really it just seemed too much fun not to jump into as soon as I could. So hey, will this end up being a group that I have to completely condemn in a later video? Probably not. But if it does, am I going to regret jumping in early and having the fun that I have, or am I going to abandon my title? Absolutely not. So far, I love the Church of Sexual Humanism, but whether that love lasts or not, from here on out, along with whatever other titles or names you might give me, you can consider me to be the gender opportunistic priest of pansexuality. This video got a little bit long because I was having a little bit of fun with it and getting a little bit more personal than usual. I hope you guys don't mind. And I'm filming in the same spot that I have for the last couple of times, so I know there will be a little bit of camera shaking, but I hope you don't mind the style of, well, my shadow being part of the host, I guess. I mean, it's probably the most of me you'll see anytime soon. As always, don't forget, as you humans tend to like and subscribe, but more importantly, leave a comment down below. I want to hear what you guys think about this one. And if you're interested, look up Shannon Q, or I wasn't actually ordained by Shannon Q. I was ordained by I believe it's the High Priestess of Random Facts. And I just love that there's a High Priestess of Random Facts. So, if you join the Church of Sexual Humanism after watching this video, please leave a comment below with your ordained title. And, as always, I'm your host, Cipher. Thanks for watching the Devil's Advocate Debate Club. P.S. The piano is not firewood yet.